Hi, Cindy, Kitchen Hot Kitchen Sasa. How are my girls doing this week? Carrie, how's your week going so far, hon?
I'm going good, but getting ready to have Friendsgiving with my son tonight, so
Woo,
Okay,
that's
awesome.
kind of fun.
that'll be a lot of fun. Candy, how are
My
you?
week has been. Oh, go ahead.
My week is going okay. It's the week before Thanksgiving for us, so I'm looking forward right now to the weekend. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's actually the last home game for the Miami Hurricanes football team. So
Okay.
Wow.
ready, but
And Megan, how's your week going?
It's been a crazy week. The start of basketball season is always kind of wild for us in this area. We have such a strong girls high school programs in this area, so it's going, and it's also football season in West Texas. So busy, busy.
Woo. And I'm super excited because tonight we have Miss Jackie Carson with us. So, for those who do not know, Jackie is the she is the senior associate for women's basketball with the ACC. And I met Jackie. I was fortunate enough to meet her. I actually met her husband first because we were at an ACC media event, and I followed him in the buffet line, and he was giving me the pointers on what was good. So thank you to Mr. Carson again, Jackie. Please thank you for that. And but the next day I saw her at the tip off, and if any of you girls have ever been to one of these events where you're just like on your feet all day, you'll notice that like a lot of the ladies will either have on sneakers or they'll have on like really comfortable heels. Jackie impressed me because she was wearing 3-inch stilettos and walking around like it did not matter one bit. I was so impressed. So Jackie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're super excited. Um, as you know, Candy and her husband Scott have another a couple of other shows, and they actually cover a lot of Miami Hurricanes events. I'm sure you might be familiar with them. But I wanted to just kind of talk to you a little bit about you. Um, so I know that you have your Bachelor of Science from Furman University in Health and Exercise and Stream Med. What made you decide to do that?
Gosh, I don't know. Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm super excited, and again, apologies that I am like missing on camera here. But yeah, I was excited. Like Jenny said, she met my husband first in the buffet line. They hit it off, so I felt like it was only right that I was able to join the podcast, and so just excited to have y'all join. But yeah, I'm just a come from a sporty, athletic family. I was pre med, so I did not envision ever being a basketball coach, especially for 20 years. So 7 years as an assistant or associate head, and then 13 years as a head coach at Furman University. I had a really good playing career. I played pro 2 years in Belgium and Israel, and then I came home. I was supposed to go to Russia, and I was like, I'm not going to Russia, and I was just kind of over the overseas life, and I just liked a little bit more stability. So I came home to start working to get my hours to apply to PA school or med school, whatever I was going to do next. And started coaching AAU. And I'm from Northern Virginia, so it was right outside DC. I was coaching Fairfax Stars. And then my assistant coach from college was like, hey, you need to coach in college. And I was like, no, I don't really have an interest in doing that. And he's like, well, I got you an interview at Bucknell, so just take the interview and see if you want to do it. And that's all she wrote pretty much. So I took the interview and I took the job, and I was 2 years at Bucknell, and I was 5 years at James Madison under Kenny Brooks, who at the time,
Oh
like I said,
wow.
was the head coach of James Madison. And then he went, y'all probably know him most, notably from Virginia Tech and now Kentucky. So I worked for him for
Right.
5 years, and then I became the head coach at Furman. So it was nice to go back home. Um, and kind of coach my alma mater. But yeah, and then this job again came out of nowhere. I didn't know I was ready to step away from coaching, but I have two young girls. one is 13, and I just came from her basketball game where I'm grateful because if I was coaching, I probably couldn't make it. And then I have an 11-year-old little girl, and they're getting to the ages where I was starting to feel bad that I was investing more in other kids or, other people's kids than I was in my own. And this job came about, and it allowed me to still impact women's basketball. So 16 months later, here I am. So yeah, it's a very unorthodox path. Nothing I never said. I wanted to one day be an administrator. My husband's an administrator still at Furman University, and I used to tell him I don't want to do what you do, and he used to tell me I don't want to do what you do, and here I am doing what he does. So yeah, it's crazy how life works.
I love that. And I do know you've also had a lot of experience on different boards. I see that you were part of the NCAA Women's Basketball Oversight Committee, as well as the Transfer Review Advisory Group. I also, you were the president of Women of Color Coaches Network, and you're still on the executive committee there, as well as the advisory board of Breakthrough Brands. So obviously basketball is your passion, and apparently you spread that to your daughter. And who won her game tonight? How did she do in her game?
Oh, it was a tough one. It was a tough one. So that's one of those when you come out of the locker room, you don't even talk about the game. But she is an 8th grader playing varsity. Like I said, we just moved to the Charlotte area from Greenville, where Furman is, and we moved in June, and she was the one who did not want to move. Why are we doing this? Why are you leaving coaching? So I felt really bad. And then she's ended up being picked and selected to play varsity as an 8th grader. So I'm just happy she's out there and she's kind of thriving. She's the first ever 8th grader because it's a new rule. So she's the first ever 8th grader to play varsity at Providence Day School in Charlotte here. And so I'm just happy to cheer it on, but it was a rough one. It was one where we were hoping that clock would run and it would end soon.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And so quick question. I haven't really heard about Breakthrough Brands. What is Breakthrough Brands?
Yeah, so Breakthrough Brands it's crazy because as you mentioned through all of my committee work, I was on the board of directors for the WBCA, which is the Women's Basketball Coaches Association. And through that, it was like a free, they selected 2 coaches from the entire WBCA to go through this kind of like pilot program from a branding company. And it was Breakthrough Brands. And it was started by a group of women, primarily 2 women who played at Harvard. And it's kind of just like unleashing the power and finding ways to elevate your career, your life, just through expanding your brand and kind of unlocking your brand. And so it helped me tremendously. Like it helped me obtain speaking events and it helped me get this job because I was able to, in my resume and my portfolio, kind of do some of the things for my brand unlock. But it's a company that really just showcases particularly women and shows them in their best light. It's like marketing and showing and promoting your brand and helping you find your inner self. So it's a really cool organization.
I love that. That's really cool. And what was your moment when you completely fell in love with basketball and knew this was your essential end game?
Excuse the pun.
Yeah, I guess my moment, like I said, I have 3 older brothers. I have no sisters. I'm the youngest. I'm spoiled rotten. I just watch them compete at like every single sport. I think sports is such a driver for just females in general, for promoting confidence. I was like long gangly, late bloomer, but sports really always gave me a place. And it gave me my confidence and it allowed me to be, leadership skills and all the intangibles that you want to see in females. So I always knew basketball was, I was really good in volleyball. I also played softball. I played tennis. My mom stuck me in everything, including dance. I was a ballerina. I was a cheerleader. But basketball was the one that I guess I had the most passion about, even though I loved playing soccer. I loved all my travel teams, but basketball was kind of where my gift was. And I used it to unlock a lot of doors and find a great career and ultimately led me to some places where I have like I met my husband at James Madison, and but it was never like I always just wanted to, it was be an orthopedic, but again, I wanted to be an orthopedic for an NBA team. So
Right.
yeah, I just felt like sports has just been such a powerful driver in my life. And the reason I got into coaching is that through sport and through basketball, I wanted to empower women to do things that they never thought they could do. So it's just been kind of my calling, and yeah, it's just been a significant part of my life.
I love that. I was a student athlete too, and I think we all were actually. I know Carrie was. Megan, you were softball.
Softball, I not basketball because like I did talk about in this area, the team that I wanted to play for, they were state champions all the time, and I didn't make it in high school, but I sure love basketball still, and I played softball in high school.
I know Candy was too, but I forgot what Candy was.
I played softball and tennis.
Okay.
Okay. And Jackie, that's when we started our show, because Carrie and I actually came up with it. And Carrie pushed me into making it happen, which I'm extremely grateful for. And then we decided to add on Miss Megan, and then we met Candy. And we decided to bring Candy on board because there's just not a marketplace.
Jen, your sound is cutting out.
Sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yes. Now we can hear you better. So sorry about that.
Yep, I can hear you. Yep.
Oh, she's cutting out again. Carrie, why don't you go ahead and talk to us a little bit about what you had planned to ask?
Jackie, I know that lots of things are changing and becoming very exciting for your division. And I'm wanting to know, we all know that the changes inside conferences can be exciting as well as bring a lot of unknowns. What do you feel like SMU, Cal, and Stanford will be bringing to the ACC women's basketball conference for you, and how do you see that playing out in a bigger scene?
Yeah, I feel like, I was kind of laughing with the commissioner. I came into this administrative role in the summer of 23. And then 2 months later, the Pac-12 collapses. And I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? And then they were saying, hey, we're going to add Stanford, Cal, and SMU after like a lot of research. And it was a very thorough process and a lot of, research. But I felt like I hit the jackpot because at the time I was like, oh my gosh, we're adding Stanford. That's Tara Vanderveer. That's the all-time winningest coach in basketball. I was like, I'm going to look really good in my role, and so I was thrilled. And I've had a long time relationship with Sharman Smith, who's the head coach of Cal. She actually every year holds a Raising the Bar Classic, which features Black female head coaches. And so the first year that she had it, we actually competed in that against Cal. And that was maybe a year and a half prior to me taking that role. So I had just played at Cal. We lost a close one to Cal, ended up beating San Diego State, but I've known Sharman for a long time. And I've also known Toriel at SMU. And I really feel like if there were 3 schools that were fit for the ACC from a women's basketball standpoint, that those 3 were the one. I love what SMU is building from an athletic standpoint. I love what Toriel is doing. And like I said, to have Stanford, oh my goodness, from a women's basketball Olympic sports standpoint, that's absolutely phenomenal. So it's been great. They add quality women's basketball. They add depth to our league. We already were getting it repeatedly, 8 teams to the NCAA tournament. And I was like, okay, now we can get 10. So it made me excited because I didn't do much, but I think we have kind of unleashed what ACC women's basketball can truly be by adding those 3 schools.
That's
Jackie, I got a
fantastic.
chance to meet Toyel, I think 2 years ago, when they were in the NIT tournament, and I was covering the Texas Tech ladies, and I went down to go cover the game, and
Yeah,
I was a little disappointed in the local media. Nobody was asking Toyel anything. They reserved all the questions for Krista Gerlich, which
yeah.
great program. We love Krista, but I actually got
I
a
love.
chance to ask her the only question at that press conference, and she talked to us about like the positives and the growth that her girls had that year. And I thought she gave a great answer. So if you happen to speak to her, tell her I really appreciated her answer in that press conference.
I certainly will. She would love that. I'm sure she remembers it.
All right, Candy.
So, Jackie, one of the big things that obviously has come about in college sports has been NIL, and everybody's talked about NIL. Can you give us an estimate, or what is like the average for most NIL for most college women basketball? Because obviously we've heard about like the Caitlin Clarks and what she's done, but the average person that's average woman that's playing in college basketball, what kind of NIL money is out there, and what are the positive and negatives that have come from NIL?
Yeah, it's really, there is almost no average. It is so all over the place. It's crazy because you have some, for women, it's more dependent on their social media and the type of reach that they have from a social media standpoint than like a traditional what it looks like for men. So you'll see some of the top football players and men's basketball players, they don't have much of a social media impact, but they their drivers are based on just their performance. Women's drivers are based on performance and then their reach predominantly through social media. So you can see NIL from a variety. I've heard. I mean, there's still some programs that don't have any NIL money, and then there's some programs who are offering literally about. I've heard up to $1 million and an exhaustion of 2 million, which is very, very high and rare. And we don't ever know if those kids actually get that money. So it's pretty crazy. But I do think it has been long overdue where, student athletes can make money off their name, image, and likeness because there were just things that as a student athlete you weren't able to do. So if you, like just instances, there was a young lady I would never forget that she was a singer and she played basketball at Boston College and she went on American Idol and she couldn't accept anything. She couldn't compete because it was a conflict of
Oh,
NCAA
right.
rules. And so like
Right.
that's a shame that you can't showcase your other talents and get paid for them because you're a student athlete. Like that's ridiculous. I remember a few years ago, there was a basketball player in North Carolina and he made designer hats and they were on their way to the NCAA tournament. He made everybody hats and they wore it on the plane. And then the NCAA was like, no, you can't advertise and sell your hats.
Oh,
Like that
that's
stuff like
sad.
that is a shame. So that, NIL and name, image, and likeness allows those things to be able to come to fruition for student athletes to be able to, really profit off of other interests that they have. I think where it's gotten really bad is just when it's simply pay to play. It's not NIL, it has nothing to do with name, image, and likeness. You're simply just paying someone to come to your school and play the sport. That's where it's spiraled out of control. I'm not sure if it will ever be able to, reel it back in. Maybe the House settlement and the rules that'll come from that, we'll see. But it's a shame that it's kind of, we've opened up Pandora's box and taken away some of the like really pure things associated with being a college student athlete. But at the same time, I am grateful that the opportunity is there for student athletes to profit off other things other than their sport.
And tell me a little
So we
bit.
had a question in the live stream, real quick. Adam says, what are the crowds like for women's pro basketball games in Europe compared to the United States?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends on where you are playing. European crowds are very rambunctious, and but I would say now the current I would say now the current college atmosphere over the past 2 years is greater than a women's basketball atmosphere in Europe, but I've also been in some pretty packed arenas. They're much smaller in Europe too, so there's that.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
the gyms are drastically smaller and the acoustics are really, really loud. So even if you're not playing in front of a lot of fans, they have noisemakers, which we can't have in the States. And there's also a bar like overlooking the court.
Oh,
So there's some things that add to it, but the crowds have always been pretty supportive of women's sports in Europe. But now, in comparison to what the crowds look like for some of our schools and some of our top programs in women's basketball, it's not really even close because the venues are not as big in Europe.
That's actually very exciting to hear.
It is. It's great. The growth of women's basketball and all of women's sports is so phenomenal right now. So it's great to see, and it's great to see that women are on broadcast and folks can catch a women's game and things like that. Those things matter, and now that we have the visibility, it makes a huge difference.
How would you say the transfer portal has it helped the game or has it hurt the game, both from like the player standpoint and from a coach's standpoint and the school standpoint?
Yeah, it's based on perspective, I think. As a coach, I hated it. Not because again, because I got into the college game to empower women and build relationships. You don't really build relationships anymore because kids are, when they're unhappy, they just bolt. And there are some instances where transferring is good. Sometimes the fit just isn't right.
Right.
And you need to find another situation, or if you're sitting behind someone and you can go somewhere and get more playing time, or if they don't offer you a degree, or you want to go a different career path. There are instances where the transfer portal is very beneficial, but I think what it's doing is when you see 1,200 and 1,300 kids in the transfer portal every year, that's difficult to swallow. I don't think we've never had that
Right.
many unhappy people, but I think
Right.
just the fact of folks, one, there is some dirty part of it as a coach because, I love being a mid-major coach and I love developing some talent that, maybe high majors overlooked. And now what's happening now is, you go and you build up a student athlete that maybe didn't get recruited well, and you develop them, and then high majors come and they're basically recruiting for mid majors, and they offer them money and they take your best kids off your roster, and so you're having to go all over again, and it's kind of that loyalty and those relationships that you've built are kind of diminished now. So that was for me personally. I wasn't a big fan. I didn't lose a lot of kids in the transfer portal, nor did I take a lot of kids, because I do think every kid transfers for a reason, and I don't need all those reasons in my program. But for some kids it is beneficial, but it's hard to hear such and such is on her fifth school, or such and such is on their fourth
Right.
school,
It
and
is.
like that part, it kind of makes me sad, because when there's any type of adversity, kids don't stick it out anymore. Like, they don't wait their turn and fight through, and like we used to when you had to sit out a year. So that there's beneficial parts to it, but I do think it spiraled out of control quickly.
I would agree.
I actually see how that not wait your turn or stay and go through the grind show up in the workplace. So it's sad that that's what some use the tool for, but I love that we do have that option for the kids.
But I would almost say that it's almost like look at the NFL. You draft rookies and you throw them into the NFL as quarterbacks and stuff like that. You don't have that wait and see program either. So it's like, it's not just.
Which is crazy, because we've seen how that wait and see program, because obviously you're a Green Bay fan, and they utilize that wait and see and learn under somebody. Like they've always done that.
Right.
And look at how successful they've been. They haven't had a ton of quarterbacks because they've been able to maintain their quarterbacks for long periods of time. So I could see that for sure. Jen, did you have something that you wanted to ask?
Oh, I was gonna say, I've seen, like, there was a he entered the NFL draft last year, but there was a player within the ACC that did use the transfer portal 3 times and finally settled on his final, college destination. But the NCAA really didn't want him to play for the school that he went to. And it was very unique because, again, like you said, Jackie, we've seen kids use the NIL, the transfer portal, for multiple transfers. And this kid had a couple, he had 3, but they were actually sound. Like the third one was because he needed to get back to be near his family for his mental health. And I mean, the other reasons are sound too. And yeah, like then you hear 5 kids and there's not an issue, or 5 like transfers and there's not an issue. I don't know. Like, and I hate that the NCAA tends to do that, especially with a particular school in the ACC. They really don't like that.
Jen has a particular name picked out, and she'll talk to you about it off air.
I was going to say, I kind of sense, I think I know what I have a sense, but yeah. But it's
pick and choose.
Yeah, it's because honestly, it is a tough. And NCAA is trying to get out of the business of waivers. Like they have been constantly saying we're tired of waivers, and this last year particularly was the first year they said we're not doing any more waivers because of that. It's not the most balanced process, and what was really happening is a lot of kids, when they were starting to call abuse on their coach to get out of sitting out and all that kind of stuff. So that coaches are like, whoa, I did not do anything to that kid, but that's the only way that they could get immediate eligibility. So then they added some kind of, parameters, and not to say that's not what happened in this one, but the NCAA for years was like, we're tired of doing waivers. We don't want to research this. Here's the parameters. If you check this box, you can play immediately. If you don't, you can't. And unfortunately, I think who we're both describing fell into the box at this time when the NCAA is like, nope, we're not doing it anymore. And then ultimately what happened, they, I think, ended up doing it. But it's just, it's been a few bad apples have just ruined it for a lot. And it's a crazy situation, because I do think kids should be allowed to have some movement. Because they likened it to, coaches can leave. But if you saw today, I think Senator Tommy Tuberville, out of all the things that he's ever done, I actually agree with something that he's did. And he's like, hey, if these kids are signing contracts, then you can't leave a contract. I could never leave my coaching contract without having a buyout. So if you're signing an NLI contract with the school, and you decide to leave, you're voiding your contract. That's where life comes in. So I do think
you have to look at it as semi-pro.
Correct. Yeah, and you can't just
I think you have to look at it.
Yeah.
Right.
So can you imagine if our pro players started being like, you know what, I don't really like playing for y'all anymore. I'm just gonna go up and leave, and we're like, wait, we have a contract. So that's where
I think we see a little bit of that. I think we see a little bit of that unfolding this off season right now. It's pretty spicy. So we had some breaking news while we were talking. Lynn Roberts was just named the head coach of the LA Sparks, which is the former coach of Utah. So Alyssa Peely's former coach. She's now going to be coaching the LA Sparks. That's kind of exciting. Talk to us a little bit before we get you out of here. Talk to us about what you're excited to see in the NCAA season. Obviously, it's we're coming off a season that was very exciting. Couple of seasons that were really, really exciting. Who are you excited to watch this season?
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm biased, so I think our Notre Dame is, they look really good right now. If they can get healthy, they have a great run at national championship. I really have liked watching our teams develop in the ACC. We have a spectacular SEC ACC challenge coming up December 4th and 5th. I mean, we have some monster matchups. I think, I can't remember who said they left Texas. We'll disregard that for right now. But Texas, yes, no, you can't like them on December 5th. That's going to be such a monster game.
That's Notre Dame game. Yes, ma'am.
That is, yes, that is that Notre Dame game. And I mean, when we were negotiating this with ESPN, I said, "Oh my God, could we imagine a better matchup where you have Olivia Miles and Rory Harmon both coming back for, after injuries, and then you have Hannah Hidalgo and Madison Booker, like two absolutely phenomenal freshman guards from a year ago. And then the storyline is, so I'm excited just for the matchups. I'm excited. I love the non-conference where you can see some compelling matchups. And then I'm really just excited to see that the Caitlin Clark effect was great, but we're not dying down. Like, people are still coming out and watching women's basketball at an unbelievable pace. And, obviously Dawn's on the other side in another conference, but I love being able to see South Carolina. I actually go to the Clemson South Carolina game tomorrow, so I can't cheer for her there. But what she's done for the sport of women's basketball is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm excited for the growth. So I love it in all aspects.
I was going to ask one question, if you don't mind. Sorry, Megan, I kind of cut you off. But
no, I'm done.
Surprised you the most so far this year? And within the NCAA or what?
Yeah.
What ACC? You can if you want, though.
Let's see, what surprised me about this current or last year's tournament?
Let's go with both, actually. I was thinking of current, but that's a good one, Jackie.
Yeah. Last year's tournament, I think it was cool to see some unfamiliar faces really have an impact in NCAA women's tournament. A lot of people learned who Oregon State's players were, and they're phenomenal. And now they're all gone, unfortunately. But nobody knew those ladies. And so I think it's special when you can have a team that really is kind of virtually unknown and then all of a sudden show up on the scene. Same thing for NC State. I think they're very undervalued on a national level. And a lot of people learned, who Isaiah James was and who was, Sanaya River. And I loved seeing some new faces than the typical Caitlin Clark, Paige Becker, kind of rhetoric. It was nice hearing some new names. What's surprising me now is there's a lot of parity, almost too much for my liking. The games are a little too close, which is great, except for when you're cheering for one side. So I do love it that you're not seeing a significant number of blowouts like you used to see all the time on the women's side. You're seeing mid-majors and, an ACC top to bottom competing with a SEC top to bottom, competing with a Big Ten. I feel like the growth of our game is affecting every program at every level. And so it's nice to see more parity and more competitive games across the board right now. So hopefully those games will continue to fall in favor of the ACC, but it's exciting basketball to watch.
It really has been. I had one other question. This went blank. Megan, back to you, ma'am.
Oh no, I think that's it. And we're at our time limit right now too. I know Candy's got to go, and I'm sure Jackie, you got to probably run too. We just appreciate you coming on so much. Just really means a lot that somebody else in the industry, another woman in the industry, will come on and give us some of your time. We appreciate that so much. And everybody that was in the comments, thank y'all for coming through and sharing and making comments. We appreciate you guys, and we will be back next Tuesday. Jen, did you have anything else before we go?
And next week,
what'd you say?
Duke legend Mike Kaminsky on.
Oh, okay, right. All right. Well, I think that does it for us this week. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, ladies.